This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Fraser and this is my husband Joe.
Hello.
Hello. We've just spent way too long doing big head, small head in front of the camera because my head looked even tinier than it usually does with its tiny pinhead. And yeah, so if you're watching this on, we're very sorry. Yeah, it's Bank Holiday Monday.
Yeah.
In the UK.
It is.
And we don't have anything to drink because we've drunk quite a lot of tea already.
The day's just gone a little bit chaos.
I've had a busy weekend.
We've had a really busy weekend, but today has not really happened.
It has not. So, yeah, we are going to be talking today about how to not sound like a pretentious person when you're writing descriptive writing.
Okay.
Words, Joe, words.
Spit them out.
But first, as per usual, Joe, what are you reading?
I'm in a little bit of a... I'm kind of between books. I'm a bit unsure.
Oh.
I know. I haven't loaded onto my Kindle the last two books of the Wheel of Time series, so I'm like, oh, I really should do that because
so
I'm so
are you
close.
Reading?
Well, I kind of started reading Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. It's a proper book. It's not just a silly film.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Is it any good?
Well, I don't know. It's all right so far. I've only read, 50 pages.
Okay. Well, before that, though, you finished The Parable of the Sowers by Octavia Butler.
Before that, I did finish The Parable of the Sowers by Octavia Butler, which was lovely.
Did you like it?
Yes, pretty
good,
pretty dark, but good.
Okay, cool. So that's what Joe's reading. Starship Troopers. I am reading, fiction-wise, I've just finished False Value by Ben Aronovich, which was pretty good. I like the Rivers of London series very much. I've missed a few out though, so I kind of had a gap, so I need to go and read some of the others. And I'm now reading The Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler.
Is that the next one?
It's the next one.
Is it a continuation of the same story, or is it like a same world, different people thing?
No, it's her daughter. It's Lauren's daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is
like
a
20 years
continuation. I don't know. I haven't got that far into it yet. I don't know how much in the future is set from there. I think, maybe 20 years or so.
Okay, cool.
So, so I'm reading that and I loved it. And my non-fiction book, I've just finished reading I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Actually, I haven't finished it, but I'm kind of working my way through it as he wrote it as a 6-week program. So I'm kind of working my way through it.
Okay.
And it's very good. It was written, I think, for people in their early 20s. And so whilst I found it really useful because I didn't do any of the stuff that I should have done financially when I was in my early 20s, it very much was written to appeal to those people. Actually reading it is a good exercise in how to write for a specific audience, but also realising that it's still going to be useful for other people too. So anyway, but non-fiction I am now reading, I'm actually between non-fiction books, haven't started yet. Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri. Okay. Which is, Emma Dabiri is a black woman. I think she's British. And it's basically about how it's about all sorts of things, but the title is to do with the troubles that black women have with like just white people everywhere, just being like, oh, can I touch your hair? It's like, no. Or literally just touching their hair without even asking.
That's assault, isn't it?
It's not cool. It's very not cool.
Not cool.
Anyway, so I am about to start reading that, so I will report back on that next week.
Cool. Cool.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
I'm interested in this Making You Rich book because, I have a vested interest. Are we rich yet?
No.
Okay. That's a shame.
Well,
when are we going to be rich?
He also talks about living a rich life, which isn't necessarily a life filled with money.
Okay.
That's what the point is. And you need to do some stuff as well. So like investments and savings and things like that. So we need to sort some shit out. Anyway, Quarantine Chronicles. I know it's not really quarantined anymore because a lot of the world seems to have decided that the pandemic's gone away. I don't know what. It hasn't. We are still pretty much socially distancing and staying away from most people, aren't we? In fact, we were just in Ludlow today to pop into a friend's shop to pick up some soap. We're like, oh, we'll have a wander around and get some ice cream. And then we had a look at how many people were there and we're like, nope.
There were just millions of people milling around without masks on, and it was just like...
A lot of people did have masks, but there were a lot of people without masks as well.
They're like, nah.
Yeah, we were like, nope, 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 nope. So we came home and sold it. We've got ice cream in the freezer. It's like, whatever. Anyway, so... Mom and Dad have been visiting because they are staying in their caravan about 20 miles away. And they came over yesterday and the day before on Saturday and took down a dead tree that had fallen on my office. Mm-hmm. It hadn't hurt my office. Just
It wasn't much of a tree, but it needed dealing with.
Yeah. And Joe bought me a trapeze rig. Well, he bought me a load of scaffolding, and then he and my dad put up a big A-frame, and I now have a trapeze in the garden.
That's pretty cool.
It's so cool, and it's amazing. And so yesterday I did a couple of hours training on my trapeze, which made me so happy. Very carefully, because I haven't got a crash mat yet. So, although I think the ground down there is about as soft as a crash mat.
Pretty squishy.
But I'm going to get a crash mat. Before anybody writes, I'm going to get a crash mat.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about purple prose. Which is... Do you know what purple prose is?
Well, it was a line in... is it The Charlatans? Your purple prose gives you away.
Oh, the song. A song by
baggy trousers, yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like overblown nonsense. They're too big, flowery, long, unnecessary language.
Yes. Yawning hippopotami.
Yawning hippopotami. What?
Anybody who is a fan of Mark Dawson and the self-publishing formula show will know what that is. I'm not telling the story because that's not my story. It's Mark Dawson's story, and I heard it at the self-publishing show live. But go looking for it. He talks about it on the website because he sells T-shirts and things with yawning hippopotami on. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that there for you. You can go and find out about that. But yeah, the problem is, and I get asked this all the time, how to write descriptions without being boring or pretentious, because it can be quite difficult.
Okay.
And I guess at its absolute simplest form, my advice is always show people, not tell them. So rather than telling people what to look at, it's like, oh, the sky is blue. You can show them by painting a picture in their minds, and that is not at all as easy as it sounds. I don't think it even sounds easy, does it?
No.
But it's a thing that we can learn. There are a few techniques, and it just takes practice.
So on a scale of writing, if I'm trying to describe something, I can either be, there's like the boring end of the scale, where I just talk facts. And then there's the purple prose end of the scale, where I go over the top and spend too much time on it. Yeah. And it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit in the middle, which is
the sweet spot.
The sweet spot of appropriate descripting.
Yeah. And some people are amazing at it, and some people are very, very bad at it, and most of us will fall somewhere in the middle and hopefully be, good at it, or okay at it, or at least, not dreadful at it.
Okay.
Okay. The problem with a lot of descriptive writing, or purple prose, is that it's overwritten.
Why is it called purple prose?
I don't know. That would have been a good thing for me to research before we started this.
Okay.
I could pause it now.
Dear listener, if you know why it's purple prose, do.
Well, by the time we finish this podcast, I will have found out, because I'm going to surreptitiously Google it in the background.
Nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to notice. It's fine. Oh, my book thing that I learned the other day. You know how slightly tatty books are described as slightly foxed?
Yes!
Slightly foxed. And, you kind of think, well, fox is only a small animal. Maybe further up the scale is like badgers and bears, as Terry Pratchett would say. But slightly foxed, it's about ferric oxide. It means it's slightly stained by ferric oxide leaking out of the ink. Because
ferric oxide is FOX.
FOX.
Ah.
Yeah.
Iron oxide.
New thing.
I liked that. I did not know that. So yes. By the way, the term purple prose is derived from a reference by the Roman poet Horace, who wrote in his Arts Ars Poetica, weighty openings and grand declarations often have 1 or 2 purple patches tacked on that gleam far and wide when Diana's grove and her altar, the winding stream hastening through lovely fields, or the river Rhine, or the rainbows being described. There's no place for them here. Perhaps you know how to draw a cypress tree. So what if you've been given money to paint a sailor plunging from a shipwreck in despair? That was kind of purple prosy in itself.
Well, that's cleared that right up. What? Hi, Horace, by the way.
Horace, Quintus Horatius Flaccus lived from 65 to 8 BC. He's probably not listening. All
right.
But yes, he's saying that overly described stuff. So if you know how to draw a cypress tree, but you've been commissioned to paint a sailor plunging from a shipwreck in despair, why would you paint the cypress tree?
Right.
So that's what the origins of the phrase are.
Purple patches tacked on. Still doesn't explain why it's purple.
Well, I don't know. He just describes it as purple patches. I don't know why.
All right.
Ask Horace.
He's been dead 2,000 years.
Well, ask him in the afterlife. I don't know. Anyway, so it's overwritten.
Right.
Or over elaborate.
Possibly not on topic.
Possibly not on topic at all.
As per cypress trees and, shipwrecks.
Yeah. Or, and usually gets in the way of the story or the message that you are trying to tell. So quite often it just gets in the way. We end up paying attention to the writing rather than to the narrative.
Okay.
If that makes sense. The writing should be almost invisible. And that's what we talk about when we talk about painting a picture in readers' minds. The writing should do that. It should create that picture without you having to spend time and energy on the writing.
Deciphering it and trying to work out what they're saying. And
yeah, exactly. It just gets in the way. And even if you're not having to work out what it says, it just gets in the way. Like it is overbearing.
Okay.
So that's the first big problem. It's like the writer's ego has stood up and trampled all over the reader, I think is a good way to think about it. You can spot it when
it's kind of vanity, isn't it? It's like the writer just flexing all over the place rather than communicating.
Oh, you know what? It's like, here's a really good analogy. It's like we all know, if we've ever been to a gym, we've all seen them. The shiny, overly muscled, creepy men who work out on the weights, except they're not really working out. They spend most of their time just flexing their muscles and looking at themselves in the mirror and leering at women and making them feel uncomfortable rather than actually working out.
Right.
So that's quite a good analogy. It's like, it was you saying flexing that gave me that idea. It's just like people who are just in the gym and they get in the way of everybody else trying to work out because they're there kind of going, oh, look at my muscles. And, what they're actually saying is, I'm a giant penis. Not I am. Anyway, so yes, that was kind of, it gets in the way. You don't go to the gym very often, do you? You don't notice this stuff. Nor do I. The second reason that it's a problem is it's really difficult to read often. Like as evidenced by Horace's explanation there, which I suspect he did deliberately. Yeah, it's deliberately purple to illustrate. So I have another example for you here that I Googled on the internet because I don't read that much crap, I don't think. So I was thinking of an example of really overly flowery writing that I could kind of pull out. I was like, I don't remember the last time I read any, so I just Googled it and found on Reddit, I believe, an example from Ivan Turgenev's Sketches from a Hunter's Album, which is a 100,000 word book, which automatically makes me go, oh my God, about the radiance of trees. Joe, would you like to read it?
Okay, Ivan says, from early morning there had been occasional drizzle, succeeded time to time by periods of sunny radiance, a season of changeable weather. The sky was either covered with crumbling white clouds or suddenly clear for an instant in a few places, and then, from behind the parted clouds, blue sky would appear, lucid and smiling, like a beautiful eye. I sat and looked around me and listened. The leaves scarcely rustled above my head. By their very voice one could tell what time of year it was.
So, there were elements of that were kind of fine. The first line, that was kind of fine, the season of changeable weather. And then he went on about beautiful eyes and being lucid and smiling and blue sky and blah, and just the whole lot altogether. It's just a little bit turgid. I don't know, maybe other people will be like, well, that's marvellous and poetic. That's fine. This podcast is not the definitive and, ultimate rules about how to write descriptively. This is Vicky and Joe's opinion about what is good and what isn't. Having said that, some of the techniques that we're going to share with you in this podcast are perfectly valid and will absolutely help you to write better descriptions of things.
Okay.
If you then choose to write about yawning hippopotami or lucid and smiling eyes in the sky, you fill your boots. Okay.
I'd like to point out this podcast is mostly Vicky's opinion because I'm just sitting here as a sidekick.
Oh, you have an opinion on what's good writing and what isn't there?
I do.
Yeah. Did you think that was good writing?
No, not very much, no.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so common problems when people try to write descriptively. Let's go a couple of common problems. First of all, shoe leather. That's what we call shoe leather in the industry. Shoe leather is where we have too much detail.
Shoe leather. Why is it called shoe leather?
I do not know. Stop asking me about the origins of things. Right. Okay. I'm going to Google why is it called shoe leather. Oh, God. I can't even type anymore. Joe, talk.
Oh, Vicky is now Googling why is it called shoe leather.
Epidemiology? What?
Epidemiology?
Shoe leather. Shoe leather. Why is it a shoe
More
leather?
walking than necessary.
No. I did read about this a while ago. This is not good radio. Right. Okay. I'm going to find out. Because in my head...
Maybe in the show notes.
Maybe in the show. But no, I remember reading about why it was called shoe leather because I remember asking myself, oh, why is it called shoe leather? And then I went and had a look and I've forgotten instantly, obviously.
Let's move on.
Anyway, shoe leather is where you write too much detail. So, for example, I woke up at 6:33 a.m. and I sat up in bed and I threw off the covers and I stepped out of bed and put on my slippers and I walked across the room and I opened the door and oh my God, there was a ghost. And it's like, start with the ghost. Start with the ghost.
Right.
We don't need all of that stuff beforehand.
My mother, hi Mom, will quite often say things like, oh, do you remember Marjorie? She used to run the greengrocers down by the supermarket that went bust in 1962. Anyway, it was turned into a cinema and it goes on and basically it ends up with Marjorie's third cousin's dog got lost and they only found it, and it just goes on. And you end up with like, I don't know who any of these people are or what we're talking about. Shoe leather.
Yes. Anyway. Good shoe leather there, Joe.
Thank you.
So yeah, too much detail, basically. Too much mundane detail that doesn't add anything to the story is a problem. It's like every word that you write, if it doesn't add something to the story or the message or move the narrative along, get rid of it.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that it can't be poetic and beautiful because we're not talking about poetic writing or beautiful writing here. We're talking about overly fussy, just minute details that don't matter.
Sure.
Another problem, pretentiousness in descriptions. And I literally came up with this and then I was really proud of how crap it is. The sea heaved like a watery bosom. I know, right? Isn't that horrible? And I was like, I'm going to have to Google a pretentious description. And I did. And then I was like, no, I can write my own. So yes, the sea heaved like a watery bosom.
Nice.
Really pretentious descriptions, by the way, happen quite a lot in romance and or erotica.
I don't read much of that.
She breasted boobily to the door. That's actually an entire other genre, which is men writing erotica really badly and somewhat misogynistically. But
she breasted boobily.
She breasted boobily. I think that's somebody has made that example up in the same way that I did about watery bosoms, just to illustrate how bad that kind of writing is. So yes, if you want to see pretentious, overblown descriptions, quite often
Go and find some Mills and Boon.
No, not Mills and Boon. Often, sorry, self-published romance.
Okay.
Also Mills and Boon. I don't know. I don't read Mills and Boon. Erotica. Some fantasy can do the same thing as well. Some fantasy can be quite. Yeah.
My sister once threatened to write some Mills and Boon.
I think you should write really good Mills and Boon.
And she contacted them and they gave her like how to write a Mills and Boon book.
Oh, really?
Like chapter by chapter. By chapter 3, they've got to have met and done this and done that. And by chapter,
because they know what words.
It's like this entire formulaic thing. All you got to do is just insert the names and fill in the blanks effectively.
Yeah, because they know what works. There aren't that many types of story, and we know what works and we know what doesn't work.
And people who are buying those books, they know what they want.
Yeah. And, don't make a face like that. If they enjoy it, that's up to them. They probably think that our Starship Troopers and things are rubbish.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's another problem, pretentiousness. And the third problem is there tend to be, I don't know why, there tend to be really long run-on sentences that just go on and on and on and on and on. And by the time you get to the end of the sentence, you've got no idea where it started.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, you've got semicolons and 6 commas and, yeah.
53 hyphens and some brackets. Brackets
always.
Brackets
are good. Brackets make it much simpler.
So
if in doubt, parentheses.
If in doubt, parenthesize.
Mm.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so we're going to now give you 3 techniques to practice so that you can write wonderful descriptions. There aren't only 3 techniques. We're just giving you 3 techniques in this podcast.
3.
Here are 3 because we've only got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So and all the while you're writing, always think about painting a picture in your reader's mind or allowing them to paint their own picture based on what you're talking about.
Okay.
So always keep that in mind. We're thinking mind pictures, word pictures, that kind of thing. So first tip number 1, and I need to thank Laura Belgray for this one. Hi, Laura. And also Anne Lamott. Hi, Anne Lamott,
Hi,
who wrote about this in her amazing book, Bird by Bird. So think about, how would a director film this scene that you're writing about? And that's a really super good tip. I never thought about it in that way before. That's how Laura Belgray put it. I was like, oh my God, that's so good. Anne Lamott in Bird by Bird talked about, imagine you have a 1-inch picture frame. Mm-hmm. Through which you are viewing your scene. What can you see? Start with that. But what Laura Belgray was talking about was, if you're writing a story, in fiction or non-fiction, and you're like, I don't know what to include details-wise in order to paint this picture, imagine what the director would zoom in on and film, how would the director film that particular scene. So I like to use the example of Kiefer Sutherland in the TV series 24. You never see him doing a poo, right? But each episode is an hour of a 24-hour day. So it's basically his entire day.
At some point, he must have gone to the bathroom.
At some point, he must have gone to the bathroom. But we don't need to see that because it doesn't further what's going on.
Unless he explodes in hour 23 because he didn't go to the loo.
Yes, I don't think that happens.
No.
And so, quite often you don't see characters brushing their teeth or washing their face. And when you do see them doing that, it's usually because it's furthering the story in some way.
That's when the important conversation happens,
or something happens, or
that's when the guy jumps out from behind the shower screen.
Something like that, yeah. So imagine that somebody is going to have to film this scene that you're writing. What is the most important part of it? What do you want them to focus on? What are the colours that you can see? What are the sounds that you can hear? What are the smells that you can smell? Think about things like that. Think about senses and all of that kind of thing. And think about whether what you're describing moves the story forward and moves the narrative forward. And if it doesn't, don't put it in.
We do a similar thing when we are designing software.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's the MVP, the minimum viable product.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, because the software guys will come up with 1,000 ways to make it sexy and cool and have buttons and loads of options and cool things that it could do.
And confuse people.
But realistically, what does it have to do? What must it do?
Yeah.
And knowing what it must do as a separate entity from what it could do.
Yeah.
Or what it would be nice if it did is very important.
That is a good principle to keep in mind when you're designing your own products and services as well, by the way. It's just start. It doesn't mean that you can't add things on later, but just start really, really simple. Because I think this is what happened to Scrivener. Because I do love Scrivener. I plan my podcast in Scrivener. We're looking at the notes for it now using Scrivener. It's a piece of software developed specifically for writers to create and craft books and put them together and all the rest of it. I don't use even a fraction of what Scrivener can do because it's too complicated. It's massively overcomplicated and I don't know how to export stuff and make it work and blah, blah, blah. And I just gave up. I was like, no, you know what? I've invested in a separate piece of software that will do that for me. A cost of a couple of $100, but it was a really good investment for me. Scrivener is, in my opinion, really overly complicated. I think if you have to take a training course to learn how to use a piece of software, it's too complicated.
It's doing more than you need.
Yeah, and so an alternative to Scrivener is Ulysses, which I think is only available for the Mac. Sorry, Windows people, but Ulysses is like a really pared down. It's somewhere between Scrivener somewhere between like Microsoft Word and your text edit, your notebook type thing. So it's got the most bare minimum of formatting, but you can organize chapters and things really well. It's a really nice piece of software. It's lightweight. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but keep that in mind when you're writing your scene. What's important. My second tip is to read Terry Pratchett. Read everything Terry Pratchett ever wrote, because he is an absolute master at describing scenes in such a way that you instantly are transported there. And my favourite example to use of Terry Pratchett's descriptive writing is when he describes a tent as the interior of the tent being like a blacksmith's armpit. That's all he needs to say. And you instantly know that it's hot, stinky, sweaty, smelly, damp, gross, maybe a bit hairy, I don't know, and crowded. And he said all of that with 2 words.
Yeah.
Blacksmith's armpit. And so when you are writing, use what I like to call vividly smelly objects to describe a situation. And when I say smelly, I also mean taste and sight and visceral sound and, really, really sensual stuff. Sensual in the sense that, you're using your senses rather than badly written erotica. So, but read Terry Pratchett. Be interesting about what you're using as analogies. Use interesting words, use interesting descriptions, things that you might not necessarily think of. The ocean as a heaving watery bosom is terrible, but it's different from a lot of descriptions of water. Don't use that because it's bad, and also I'm going to copyright it. I'm not.
Print it on a t-shirt.
You could print it on a t-shirt, yeah. So yes, Terry Pratchett. Think about what springs into your head when you're thinking about things, and analogies that people will be able to relate to as well. Don't go too obscure, because that's another problem. If you go too obscure, most people are not going to be able to relate to what you're talking about, and it will pass over their heads or just stop them in their tracks. And
I'm going to slot a little one in there and say, don't try and impress people.
Yes.
Do not try and impress people with your literary genius.
No.
It does not work.
It does not work, and it gets in the way, again, of the narrative, because you don't want... you will have come across this when you are reading something and you literally get stopped in your tracks because you're like, oh, what? And it just makes you go, what? And that's bad. That is bad. A reader doesn't... You want to have like a slippery, slidey slope for people to gently... slide down rather than a bumpy path that they have to stumble across. And because that's when the writing gets in the way, and you're just like, you can't, what it's like? Have you ever read a book where you just like every 5 minutes, it's like climbing over something? Yeah. And you're just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. A really good example of that is Will Self's books.
All right.
Because some people who have a larger vocabulary than me, I can read his books if I've got a dictionary next to me, right? But he just uses I think I've got a pretty good vocabulary.
You got words.
I got words. And his books, he just uses the most obscure words. And if you know what all those words mean, it's great, because the stories that he writes are great. But for me, the language he uses gets in the way.
Right.
Because I can't follow. Also, his stories are very strange as well. Anyway, so that was my second tip. My third tip is to make abstract ideas concrete, because our brains don't deal well with abstracts. They just kind of slide off. So when you're talking about like really large numbers, we really struggle with really large numbers, right? Which is why, and this is something that will definitely make people's hackles bristle. But when you read about, 1 million people dying in the tsunami, the Boxing Day tsunami, you can go like, oh God, that's terrible. But it doesn't really hit you because the number is too big. It's like, it's too many people. And you're kind of horrified in a distant kind of way. But when you find out that one of the people who died was a woman called June Abiratney, who pushed her daughter out of the window to safety just before she herself drowned, that makes you feel something, because suddenly it's a real person. That is a real person, by the way. Yeah. So yeah, that's why charities, when they send you fundraising letters, will
tell you about people.
Will tell you about people. They'll give you the name of the child. Oh, you could be sponsoring this child. That's her name. This is what happened to her. This is the elephant that you could save. That's its name. This is this is what happened to it. And they do that because they know that that's the only thing that works. Because otherwise, we're just like, oh my God, I can't process that many deaths. It's too horrifying. Yeah. And not just because it's too abstract, but also because we don't want to think about that many people suffering, because it's horrible. So, and you can't horrify people into doing things. Not in that way. You have to make it personal. So, and anyway, to translate that into telling a story, you might be talking about something being, I don't know, how far away is the moon? Like a long way. See, again, it's a long way away. But, or if you think about, was it like colon or something. If you unwind all of our stomach, it would stretch to the moon or something. Have I made that up?
I think you probably have.
I don't know. I think I haven't.
Maybe all your blood vessels. I don't know.
Is it blood vessel? Hang on.
I don't think your intestines reach to the moon. I don't think that's true.
How long is your intestine in miles? Wait a minute. Hang on. Live Googling here. Okay, it is... Oh, mother... Oh, okay, it doesn't reach to the moon.
20 feet is how long your intestines are.
Are your intestines really a mile long? Approximately a mile. I don't know if that's true or not.
Small intestine is actually the longer of the two and measure at approximately a mile. Shut up.
Anyway, something in your body, possibly it's DNA, I don't know. If you unwind it, it will go all the way to the moon. This is a really bad way to make my point. Okay, if you're talking about how long is 100 meters, right, for example.
Yes.
Even though I used to run the 100 meters, I still can't really picture how long it was. But if you say, oh, it's the length of a football pitch.
It's like 13 seconds, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know. I've just derailed my own point. But anyway, make them... So if you're saying...
But then when people start doing that, well, it's like 6 London buses. Is that any more understandable?
Well, I don't know. It's like if you say something is like, how high is a house? Is it like 6 meters?
Something like that.
If you say something is like 6 meters high, then to me, I really struggle with that kind of thing. But if you say, oh, it's the same size as a house, then that's fine. It's like 2 meters high. It's about the same size as a tall man. Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, don't just use figures and numbers.
Okay.
So they do this in science quite often when they're doing, good science writing will do that. So they might be talking about like a nanobot or something, and they'll be like, oh, it's 10 microns or whatever, which doesn't mean anything to most people who aren't scientific at all. But if you say, oh, it's about half the width of a hair.
More like 50 microns, but okay.
50 microns, yeah. But if you say it's like half the width of a hair, then, okay, it's still super tiny, but you can get an idea of what that looks like or feels like.
Yeah.
That was a really long way of saying...
Man, we're over time.
I got myself in a right tangle. Anyway, what's the takeaway, Joe?
Takeaway. Read a lot.
Yeah.
Use your words. Don't use too many words.
Read a lot and write a lot. If you want to get better at describing things and telling stories and writing amazing descriptions that paint pictures in people's heads, read a lot of Terry Pratchett and other people, and write a lot.
Cool.
And practice those techniques. And there are more techniques. That is not my definitive list of, techniques, and other people have other techniques, but I thought those were 3 that you can use quite easily.
Strip down your stories to the minimum viable product.
And then you can kind of, you can describe and embellish and all the rest of it. But yeah.
What's the story?
Yeah, what's the story? Okay, Joe, we've got a review to read out.
Okay, 5 stars from Keefy George. He says, one of the best small business podcasts out there. I have been receiving Vicky's emails for about 18 months and listening to the podcast since it started.
Hello.
Hello, Keefy. The podcast offers excellent advice to anyone looking to grow their business. I feel as though I have saved myself a lot of time as the info in the podcast gets straight to the point and deals with core relevant issues. Core issues relevant to any business. Highly recommend.
Oh, thanks very much.
Thanks, Keefy George.
So the podcast has obviously changed now because my focus is on books and writing. But if you go back and listen to all of the old podcasts, there's a big focus on business.
Yeah.
And marketing.
Small business marketing and things, yeah.
So yeah. Next week, we will be back and we will be talking about how to write about yourself because people find it really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So we will be back to talk about writing about yourself. In the meantime, if you want to practice all of the stuff that we've just been talking about, what's a good way for people to do that, Joe?
Join the live writing sessions at www.moxiebooks.co.uk/power hour.
Yeah, come and join Team Moxie. We meet Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 7 a.m. UK time, Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. UK time. And it's £1 whole English pound for the first 7 days, so you can come and try it and see if you like it.
See if you get some stuff done.
Yeah, you share your goals with everybody. We're all like, right, I'm going to get this much done this morning. Sometimes it's writing, sometimes people are reading, sometimes people are writing the week's worth of emails or whatever. This morning I was putting my newsletter into InDesign ready to send to print. So that's what I was doing. And then afterwards, we say how we got on, and then we have a little bit of a discussion about something. So maybe somebody's got a question that I and the group will answer, or maybe if nobody's got a question, I will just do a little teaching lesson. I'll spend 10 minutes just giving a quick writing or publishing or something tip. And those in themselves are flipping priceless. The power of a group. Power of a group. So yes, and if you've listened to every episode, email me with your postal address and I will send you something silly to say thank you. And if you like this podcast, please go and subscribe and leave us a review.
5 stars.
Please leave us a review. We will read you out. And if you tell me that you've left a review and what business you are, I will plug your business.
Nice.
That sounds like a bribe. It is not. No, it's not.
It's not.
No. And if you want to share this podcast, you can send people to moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast.
Nice.
Thanks very much for listening as usual. We'll be back next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.